Hello and welcome to the online learning session. Students, we will move ahead in chapter 1, resources and development. Topics to be covered in this lesson are development of resources, importance of development of resources, resource planning, importance of resource planning in India, and conservation of resources. Students, before beginning, we shall ask a question. Why is the development of resources necessary? Students, see that human beings have used the resources which have led to the following consequences. First one is depletion of resources. Second one is accumulation of resources. And third one is indiscriminate exploitation of resources. So, we see that in order to satisfy the greed of a few individuals, resources are being depleted on a large scale. Resources today have been accumulated in a few hands, which in turn divides the society into two segments, that is haves and the have-nots, or rich and poor. A few people have the resources, a few people do not have the resources. Next, we see this has also led to indiscriminate exploitation of resources, which has led to global ecological crises such as global warming, ozone layer depletion, environmental pollution, and land degradation. Therefore, we see that an equitable distribution of resources has become essential for a sustained quality of life and global peace. There should be an equitable distribution of resources, and for equitable distribution of resources we will need to plan and therefore develop the resources. Let us move ahead. If the present trend of resource depletion by a few individuals and countries continues, now your chapter here speaks about the present trend. The present trend, what is the present trend of resource depletion? The trend is of resource depletion by a few individuals and countries such as USA, China, etc. If it continues, the future of our planet is in danger. Now this statement is signaling that the resources are not being developed properly. It means that they are not being distributed properly. A few developed nations have a large chunk of resources, while the developing and underdeveloped countries have to suffer. Therefore, resource planning becomes essential for sustainable existence. Resource planning becomes essential for sustainable existence of all forms of life, and therefore sustainable existence is a component of sustainable development. Now here it gives rise to another concept of sustainable development. Let us see what do we actually mean by sustainable development. Students, it means that the development should take place without damaging the environment, and development in the present should not compromise with the needs of the future generations. We have already dealt this topic in class 9th as well. So it's a very easy topic, and you understand this, that it is a development that takes place without damaging the environment in the present, plus the development should not compromise with the needs of the future generations. We today should leave sufficient amount of resources for the future generations to come and get benefited from. For this, an important development took place in 1992. For ensuring sustainable development, an important summit took place in 1992. Now let us move ahead and see what is this summit all about. The name of the summit was Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit 1992. Now let us see what this summit is all about. In 1992, June, more than 100 heads of states, here states mean countries, different countries, met in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Students, can you comment that which event recently took place at Rio de Janeiro? For hint, I am telling you it was a sport event, and this summit was the first international Earth Summit. Now, since we have studied that 100 heads of states, different states, participated in this Earth Summit, that is why it was the International Earth Summit. The summit was convened. Now let us look at the objectives of this summit. The summit was convened for addressing urgent problems of environmental protection and socio-economic development at the global level. Now, a question can be framed here that what was the aim or objective of the Rio de Janeiro Summit 1992? So therefore, you should from here, while reading the textbook, read it like it was convened for addressing urgent problems of environmental protection and socio-economic development at the global level. Okay, now let us see what further development took place back then in 1992. The assembled leaders signed the Declaration on Global Climate Change. This is an important development. They signed a declaration on global climatic change and biological diversity. Okay, and this convention, this document endorsed the global forest principles and adopted Agenda 21 for achieving sustainable development in the 21st century. Now here's an important point. Once again, they adopted Agenda 21. Okay, so therefore the first point comes as the description of Rio de Janeiro Summit, basically introducing the concept, introducing the summit. Second will come as its aim and the other features. Now let us try to find out that what is this Agenda 21 which was adopted in the Rio de Janeiro Summit 1992. So it is the declaration signed by the world leaders. It's a declaration signed by the world leaders in 1992 at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, UNCED, which took place at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Now what is this actually? This is a declaration. Okay, when was it signed? It was signed in 1992, where at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, at which place? At Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Now let us look at its aims and objectives. It aims at achieving global sustainable development. Now it is an agenda to combat here means to fight and eradicate environmental damage, poverty, disease through global cooperation on common interests, mutual needs and shared responsibilities. So this is the aim of Agenda 21. One major objective of Agenda 21 is that every local government should draw its own Agenda 21. So what is Agenda 21 related to? It is related to global sustainable development. And how are we going to achieve this global sustainable development? We will achieve this global sustainable development by combating environmental damage, poverty, disease through global cooperation on common interests, mutual needs and shared responsibilities. So I think the topics here are fairly clear, and let us move to the next topic of our chapter. Now the development of resources leads us to this topic, resource planning. Development of resources could only take place when resources are properly planned. So let us study this topic What is the meaning of resource planning? First of all, students, if I ask you what is the meaning of resource planning, so let us see what do we mean by resource planning. It is a widely accepted strategy for judicious use of resources. Clear? So it is a strategy, method involving a lot of plans, logic, etc. for judicious use of resources. Now what do we mean by this judicious use of resources? See, resources after planning, when they get exploited, they should not be overexploited or underexploited, so as to use them efficiently and in a planned way. They should be exploited only as per our requirements. They should not be overexploited and they should not be underexploited as well. They should only be exploited in the amount as required. Now students, one important concept comes in the concept of resource planning, and this topic is, why is resource planning important for a country like India? Students, we see that India is a huge country. It has a vast amount of area and with contrasting features. For example, try to recall chapter 2 of class 9th geography, what we have learnt there. Contrasting features here will mean different types of physical features all over the country. In the north we have the Great Himalayas. In the Deccan we have the Great Deccan Plateau, the Peninsular Plateau. On the east and west sides we have the eastern coastal plains and the western coastal plains. We have deserts, we have rivers, so we have different kinds of physical features in our country. So these are the contrasting features. Now, what is important in the context? Due to this contrasting features, some regions are well endowed. It means some regions have good amount of resources while some regions lack in the amount of resources. Some regions of India have sufficient amount of resources while some regions are deficient in resources. So in order to have a balanced resource planning for all over the country, if we see national, state, regional and local levels, therefore the development in a proper way is ensured in all the regions. So actually all this contrast and the way we develop these resources calls for a balanced resource planning at the national, state, regional and local levels, so that development in a proper way is ensured in all these regions. Students, now let us move on to our next topic, and that is resource planning in India. Now this involves a question that how is resource planning carried out in India? How does resource planning take place in India? So let us learn about the concept. These are the three broad methods through which resources are planned in India. So first of all, identification and inventory of resources are carried out. It means, let us suppose this is India. So identification of resources means, if we consider, let us consider some regions such as Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Deccan Plateau. So identification means surveying and mapping all these areas and trying to identify what kinds of resources are found in these regions. And inventory here means the amount of resources, the stock of resources which have been discovered in these areas. So prior to planning we shall identify, and we shall also identify the amount of resources in the regions. Clear? And for this, surveying and mapping are carried out, and quantity of the resources as well as quality of the resources are determined with the help of first method. So till here we find the types of resources, their quality, and their amount. Now let us see the second method, evolving a planning structure. Now since resources have been discovered in the first stage, a proper planning structure involving proper technology and skills is what required. Now students, we shall also learn about the institutions. In class 9 civics, you might have well gone through this topic. Now institutions, here will be one institution is technological institution, and the second of course relates to government. The institutions related to the government, and the other one is technology. Technological institutions plus government institutions. So with the help of all these, we can evolve a proper planning structure as to what kind of, let us assume this was Jharkhand in India, let us assume what kind of technology is required to exploit different kinds of resources in the regions, and for this proper skills are also required, as well as with proper technology, proper support from government institutions is also required at this stage. Now students, we come to the third step. In the first step, we identified the quantity and quality of the resources plus the regions where these resources were found in India. Second, after the step 1, we have evolved a planning structure with proper technology, skills and institutions. Now in the step 3, we need to match the resource development plans with overall national development plans. Now I think there must be a question mark regarding this step in your minds. So let us discuss this step. What is the matching of resources of development plans with overall national development plan mean? Students, see, it's a very easy concept, nothing to worry about. For example, if the government has set a rupees 10 aside for overall national development, will include all the different sectors of development. Okay, so if government has set aside rupees 10 for overall development, national development plans, it includes communication, defense, education, agriculture, etc. Okay, so we have to see that what is the amount, what is the budget set aside for resource development plans. It shouldn't be like 50 paise, it shouldn't be like 25 paise. It means it should not be in such a small proportion when compared to the overall national development plans. Okay, so it implies checking overall budget allocation for resource development plans, that of budget allocated for national development. It means that the overall national development plan must have a substantial amount of budget allocation for resource development plans. Then you will ask, sir, what amount should be kept? We should keep like at least 2.5%, so 2.5 rupees or anything greater than that, but it should not be as small as these amounts. Okay, so these are the topics, these are the methods through which resources are planned in India. Let us move further. Now the topic of resource planning in India continues. Let us see. The availability of resources is a necessary condition for the development of any region. Now this talks about the availability of resources is a necessary condition for the development of any region, but mere availability of resources in the absence of corresponding changes in technology and institutions may hinder development. Yes, It speaks about that only if resources are available in a certain region and there is an absence of technology and institutions, so this may hinder the development of resources of that region. A very good example is solar energy and wind power in the regions of Rajasthan and Gujarat. I can I hope that you can connect with me. Now let us see ahead. There are many regions in our country that are rich in resources, but these resources are included in economically backward regions. Now students, this is a very important concept, as well as it hints a very easy example. Now can you tell me, around Bihar, any region which is very rich in resources, but that region, despite possessing such a huge amount of resources, is included in the economically backward regions? Yes, if you agree with me, it is Jharkhand. Students, you may be well aware of the reserves of resources in Jharkhand. Despite that, this state is still included in economically backward regions. We will discuss this statement further, but first of all let us discuss, on the contrary, there are some regions which have a poor resource base, but they are economically developed. Now first of all let us have one more example. Now students, can you tell me only one region which does not have a very good amount of resource, a poor resource base, but still they are economically developed? If you agree with me, I'll go with Punjab. Okay, you can see that the majority of the land is occupied by agriculture. Okay, but only this agriculture has helped Punjab become an economically developed state, despite it does not have a very good resource base. So students, when we consider the example of Jharkhand, we see that it has a very good amount of resource base. But let us come here. The technology in Jharkhand is absent, and the institutions are not working. They are not willing to work there as they should be, or they should have been, which has hindered development of that region till date. But when we see Punjab, well drained by the Himalayan rivers, so a huge amount of alluvial soil can be easily found. With the help of only this, people of Punjab have developed the commercial farming so nicely that today, despite not having much resource base, this state is economically developed. So I think this concept is clear. If you have any doubts, kindly post them. Now let us see what this concept gives rise to. The history of colonization reveals that rich resources in colonies were the main attractions for the foreign invaders. We have already seen this, students, in class 9th history as well. It was primarily the higher level of technological development of the colonizing countries that helped them to exploit resources of the regions and establish their supremacy over the colonies. Now let us highlight this point first of all, because it's an important topic here. It is telling us that why some countries could easily colonize us. So first we see that important powerful countries were attracted, the foreign invaders were attracted by the huge resource base of India, but it was only due to the development of colonizing countries and the level of technology that helped them exploit resources of these regions. Therefore, the resources can contribute to development only when they are accompanied by appropriate technological development and institutional changes. Here, The concept is time and again trying to emphasize the importance of appropriate technological development and institutional changes. Technological development and institutional changes. Only the availability of resources in a region could not lead to its proper development. Students, therefore, we see resource development in particular does not only involve the availability of resources as we have discussed right now, but also the technology, quality of human resources, and the historical experiences of the people as well. I hope you have understood the relation between the availability of resources, the technology, and institutions very nicely. If you have any doubts, kindly ask them and let us move ahead. Now students, we come to a very important topic of conservation of resources. But before that, we shall ask two questions from us. Why is conservation of resources important? Why? And the second is, if it is important, then what are the methods of its conservation? Let's go through the section and try to understand, students. Now, as we have seen that resources are vital for any developmental activity. The first point comes as they are vital for any developmental activities, therefore their conservation is important. But irrational consumption and overutilization of resources may lead to socio-economic and environmental problems. Now the second point speaks about irrational consumption and overutilization of resources which may lead to socio-economic and environmental problems. Now don't you think that yes, the resources are being irrationally consumed, they are being overutilized, and yes, they have led to huge gaps, socio-economic and environmental problems. Okay, now let us see, students. That is why conservation of resources, planning of resources, and therefore its utilization is very important. To overcome these problems, resource conservation at various levels is important. See, students, we need to overcome all these problems. That is why resource conservation at various levels, which we have discussed right now, national, state, local or regional, is very important, and this had been the main concern for the leaders and thinkers in the past. For example, Gandhiji was very apt in voicing his concern about resource conservation in these words. Now since it's a quotation, we need to highlight it. What did he say regarding resource? There is enough for everybody's need and not for anybody's greed. Very aptly said, very aptly remarked. Yes, and this is what we have seen in the preceding topics of today's lesson. Do you remember that topic? Yes, we can go to that topic, and I was talking about this one, accumulation of resources in a few hands, which in turn has divided the society into two segments, the haves and the have-nots, or the rich and poor. Now let us get back to what Gandhiji said. Now students, he said there is enough for everybody's need and not enough for anybody's greed. Okay, so the earth provides us with sufficient amount of resources, but some people, especially in the developed nations as well, you can see that they are constantly being greedy and they are constantly being in a mood of over exploiting and over utilizing all the resources in order to become much more developed, in contrast to the developing and the underdeveloped nations. Let us see what the topic has to say. He placed the greedy and the selfish individuals and exploitative nature of modern technology as the root cause of resource depletion at the global level. So what are the 2 points? What are the root causes of resource depletion at the global level? They are the greedy and selfish individuals and their exploitative nature of modern technology. Greedy and selfish individuals plus exploitative nature of modern technology. Now another beautiful remark is succeeding this point, and we would like to highlight that he was against mass production and wanted to replace the production by masses. Do you understand what this statement is saying? How beautiful this statement is, students. He said that he was against mass production. Here, mass production means producing anything in bulk. Anything in bulk. For example, British were producing cotton clothes at that point of time, cotton textiles in the 18th and 19th century. And gradually, after the Industrial Revolution took place, they kept on increasing their production. So the bulky production, the mass production, the production in huge quantities. So Gandhiji was against this, that you use a technology and you produce anything in bulk. Rather, he was of the opinion that this production should be replaced by masses. Masses means what? People. Rather, this kind of production should involve, like today, if in this factory there were 100 workers and it is known as mass production, so Gandhiji was of the opinion that it should be replaced by the production by the masses. Therefore it should have like 1000 workers. 1000 workers should get jobs, should get employment in these factories. So I hope, students, concepts till conservation of resources are clear. Students, I have come to see that you people are not strictly reading the NCERT textbook and also raising doubts which are not in the context. So I would request you people to stick to the NCERT textbook and raise whatever doubts of yours are in the context of your textbook. So that's all for now. Complete your assignments, questions, map works as you have been doing in your class 9th. Thank you.